Thank you very much, John. And no, I am not an expert. I'm truly a generalist, and I'm proud to be one. So, Robert Sanders, I represent the European Business and Innovation Centre Network. And I'll just give you a few introductory words before making a few comments about the subject, and a few ideas, and perhaps some things we can talk about together. Because as John said, we'd like you to join with us afterwards. And indeed, this is the elite session, as you said, John, so you've done very well to get here. So we are a network, essentially, of business innovation centres, incubators. So we have about 250 members across Europe, and increasingly some more members outside the EU 28. And we're all about trying to assist startup companies, entrepreneurs who have projects, detecting good ideas and helping them in a very holistic way. It's tough out there, John, you know? It's tough out there. And some of our guys dream of becoming companies that have 120 people. And probably say the same thing. We have the leading edge technology. Why can't we work with companies like you? So in that respect, we represent very much the startup community, but also as our companies go through the incubation process and grow, we also have an increasing number of SMEs that are serviced by our members. And it's very important for us that we do represent very much the ecosystem of entrepreneurs. And we're very proud to be one of the networks started by the European Commission almost 30 years ago as an EU project, and we're still here today. And now we are a membership-based subscription organisation. So perhaps a few words on what, if we did a straw poll really, what are the entrepreneurs' priorities? What are they thinking on a day-to-day basis? And then I'm going to share some ideas of perhaps what the SMEs are thinking about as well, who obviously are slightly more mature. A lot of it obviously is based on sales and income, trying to think about how we can go forward the next few years. In some instances, finance is always a big part of the issue. Trying to get the teams in place. Trying really to get competitiveness going, looking for new products and trying to get access to new markets. And increasingly on a global basis as well. We find that a lot of our entrepreneurs in the network, the startups, are trying to create global partnerships. I think that's also a very important part of the subject today. It's really trying to form global partnerships from a very early stage basis. We have some startup companies that are working with colleagues across the world. One guy in India, one guy in San Francisco, one guy in Munich. And that, I think, is an important development. In terms of the larger companies, the SMEs, again, slightly different perspective on things. Obviously, the processes are growing, the factories are growing, looking to get new sales opportunities. I like that phrase, keeping the social peace. A lot about is trying to manage the human component, the resource components of companies. Protecting IP is very important. That is sometimes something that the younger companies are struggling with and need all sorts of help from local, regional, national experts. And then perhaps moving towards licensing agreements, looking at acquisitions, daring networking and collaborative projects. These are all sort of the daily things that SMEs are dealing with. And therefore, in terms of looking at the sort of future internet opportunities, sometimes they do find that as a bit of a struggle. They see it perhaps as something they fear. They see what will happen when I start speaking to larger companies. What about my IP? Do they want to buy the company? So it's certainly something that interests them, but obviously there is some trepidation as well. John, of course, at the outset, you very mentioned the importance of innovation. And again, a lot of the companies at EBN are looking at total innovation. Now, you might be curious to see, where does that first sign come from? Which country do you think that first sign comes from? It's green. So it's the USA. And often, of course, we see the USA as being a prime example. And in the professor's figures, interesting enough, he said that R&D, we do very well in Europe, but often when we try to translate that in success in markets, that's perhaps where we do see the gap. And one of the reasons also is possibly finance. Again, I think it's another important pillar. And we, of course, work with financial experts across the globe. And just say one example here is that sometimes a company will pitch in the States, and it'll be a great idea, but possibly needs some tweaking. And quite often the financial guy will say, hey, that was awesome. Have you thought about just doing this and tweaking it? Obviously, this is an anecdote. Often in Europe, the response will be the same guy, no, it won't work. it won't work. We've tried that. And so I think there is the big elements of really being positive about things. And sometimes in Europe, I do think that when the US and the Asia look at Europe, they think Europe is quite mediocre in some perspectives. And innovation is also about taking risks, okay, with finance as well. And of course, you've got to be slightly different. And I think that again is something perhaps where we need to concentrate more on in Europe. It's really making sure that do we have a USP? And also, we go to a lot of opportunities to speak around events, but in some cases in Europe, I think we do talk too much about it, John. We need to now get on and do it. So the time for talking is over. We've got to be special and get on with it. Now, there are also certain links to organisations that we also think are very interesting, and it's all about clusters, especially for start-up companies and SMEs as well. It's all about making connections, working with networks. I think that's one thing where Europe, we do have some really strong entities, organisations, something that we can build upon. And again, something that I think the whole future internet topic will be of interest to clusters as well. So that's a very important part of the jigsaw puzzle. So what about SMEs' impressions about future IT and internet? If we did a sort of a straw poll of some of our members, this is sort of some of the comments that we'd probably get back. Yes, they are sort of fascinated by the whole subject and they're curious. But again, a lot of the markets are fragmented. How do we work with the big boys? And how can we be secure and have robust operations and market opportunities with the big boys? Sometimes, yes, we don't have a powerful marketing concept. Again, on the professor's slide, marketing, that is a huge part of it. It's not good enough just to have the innovative products and services. You've got to be able to market them as well. Sometimes SMEs, we don't have all the answers. There's a lack of understanding. We're looking for explanations. We need help with technical solutions as well. But overall, I think the SMEs do agree that we need to collaborate. But also, we need technical trainings as well. And sometimes we're a little bit scared and sceptical of some of the academic partners. Possibly in the States and Asia, that's not necessarily such a big deal. And perhaps just some topics, some ideas about the prime interest for SMEs. Obviously, for lots of us still, it's the speed of the broad and the band. E-admin and e-commerce. E-admin is something that SMEs are looking to get into, but again, it seems to be quite difficult markets to access. IP, of course, comes up again. And SMEs are very interested in the open data and big data projects. And I think, to be fair, there is also still a great interest for learning as well. Because this is often a gap, I think, SMEs, how can we connect? And also, we still very much believe, and there are no names really here, it's all about investing in networks. I mean, companies, entrepreneurs, SMEs can't do it by themselves. So they need the help. And we do think that the large support financially from the Commission in terms of the first round of projects will be very, very useful. Now, the networks have now got to see how they can connect to entrepreneurs, connect to the startup companies, connect to the SMEs. And that's where, of course, I think we should also not underestimate the role of intermediaries. We in this room, we can't speak to everybody. So we need to have powerful, robust, strong intermediaries who can also do part of the work for ourselves. And as a parting comment, as we're sort of talking about the chasm, I think also one of the other issues is education and culture. I still think that all of us in Europe are sometimes sceptical about entrepreneurs. We don't give them enough encouragement. As you might know, in some European countries, when you do a straw poll of young people, they still want to be a civil servant, for example. I think it's very important for society also to back people, in your family, in your friends. Or when someone says, hey, I'm thinking of setting up a business, well, tell me about it. What's it all about? What's the competition? And I think that's a very key message as well, is that in Europe we need to be more positive, everybody, about boosting and fostering entrepreneurship and innovation as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robert.